I
Okay.
did.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
We're
she'll join
live.
if she can. Cool.
Okay. We were just saying that we messaged Gretchen. She'll join us if she can. They're having some storm issues um, over where you're at and where you at.
We're in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm in my office right now, which has way better internet than our house does.
Dude. And I just had a dude, Baltimore, Maryland guy, Evan Smith, that we spoke to yesterday. New trainer, great guy, funny dude. And check out that interview I did. But today I'm doing. How do you say the last name? Zarnota.
Zarnota. Yeah.
Yep, that's what I figured, but I thought I'd ask. So, Mr. Zarnota, my buddy Nate, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a little warm here. Like summertime is kind of my least favorite. We're getting ready to head into fall though, which is the best
Cool.
time of year.
Josh, dude, I'd love to talk to you too, man. Josh just looks like he's got his bird dog there. Do you know Josh personally? I know that you guys are probably.
We're like Facebook friends. I've never met him in person, but we've had a lot of correspondence. So
I don't think I've met Josh in person either.
yeah.
And if you guys are bird dog people, let us know in the comment section. Let us know what kind of dog you have. If you have any questions pertaining to the sport, that's basically primarily what we're going to be talking about today. But we can also get into just dogs in general. Nate, do you want to give people an introduction about and tell them what you're all about? Where you? I mean, you're in Baltimore, Maryland, but you're all over the place, man. You travel all over the country to do the sport, but also to learn from so many great mentors as well. So we'll talk about that. And I just heard back from Gretchen too, so we'll see if she comes in here and hopefully she'll be joining us as well.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm Nate Zarnota, and Gretchen is the other half of Baltimore Dog Works. That's our companion dog training company. We started that company in 2015 after working for another Baltimore local company for a while, for a few years before that. So I've been training for about a decade now, I guess. And in the past 5 years, started getting into bird dogs. I got
poor guy. There's Evan.
Yeah, but Evan, so we were supposed to talk yesterday, and I got bumped for you, so I'm a little miffed about
go
that.
bump him in person, man. Like I started from a Baltimore beef
Yeah.
on
So
the Bow Wow Bill.
we have beef already, man. So we started getting into bird dogs about 5 years ago. I got my Deutsch Drahtar Anya. Then
Drahtar?
yeah, and we'll talk
No
about
shit.
we'll talk about like the German breed clubs later, I'm sure.
Cool.
And so I got her and started kind of training her and going through the tests. And then, like I said, Gretchen and I already knew each other, so she was kind of coming to some of the training stuff and participating in that. And then she kind of got bit by the bug. I think it was the first time that we really got to experience like getting to go with the flow instead of feeling like we're trying to stop what dogs are doing, right? Like a lot of pet dog stuff, we're trying to kind of sometimes make them not be as much of a dog, right? So kind of getting to go with the flow and work with genetics and things like that. And I think she got bit by that bug. So she got her hunting license. Grew up in Long Island. So if she doesn't end up getting on here, she'd be a good person to have to talk to because she's got a really unique experience as well. So anyway, she grew up in Long Island, like never did any hunting kind of stuff or anything like that. But, went through hunter safety, got her hunting license, started helping me train Anya, and then decided that she wanted a dog herself. That did the same kind of stuff. So she got Ebby, who is a Klein Munsterlander. So another German breed of versatile hunting dog that runs in the same tests that the Drahtars do.
That's what Jonathan Brinkley was one of his recommendations that we were just chatting. And
dude, if people if you like a lab temperament, like a dog that just shows up happy to interact with you and happy to work, but then you also like a little bit more of the like independence of the pointing breeds, and then like because these are German dogs and so they have to get tested on fur, there's a little bit of gristle there too. I just think like for somebody that's looking for
they're smaller too. The Munsterlanders are, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can pick them up with one arm. I mean, they're 40 to 50 pounds, the females. I don't know how big the males are because we only have females, but yeah, I'm smitten by them for sure. And so Gretchen got Ebby. and has trained her, got her certified for breeding. And so they actually just had their first litter. Their kennel is Wild Bloomin' Kennels. So she just had her first litter, 7 puppies, all healthy. They're all spoken for. So they're just they're really, really nice dogs. And then so nice, in fact, that I went to a test in, I think we're in Illinois, and there was a guy who was running his Klein Munsterlander at that test, and I watched that dog. So part of that puppy test for them is they have to do a rabbit track on live rabbits. So it often happens at a beagle club. And so I watched that dog see, I don't know, half dozen rabbits kicked up right under her nose and watch them run. So usually what happens with young dogs that aren't trained a whole lot yet is they would want to sight chase those rabbits. And so I watched this dog watch a bunch of those rabbits get kicked up and run basically right under her nose. And then when it was her time to actually track, instead of going to the places where she saw those rabbits run, she put her nose down, and she was dedicated to using her nose and following the track. And I just felt like that was a remarkable amount of composure for a dog that young, and like just really good sort of mental stability. And so I was just kind of talking about how much I liked this dog the whole time. And then I found out the guy was selling her. And so he was selling this dog because it just, I don't know. I don't know all the details exactly, but temperamentally was not a great fit for him and his household. I think he said she didn't settle very well. And, my background is obedience, and I come from the Linda Kame School of Dog Training. So I'll make you do it if I have to. And so her kind of fitting into the house and settling down and all that wasn't a problem for us. So she fits right in. She's great. She's honestly probably our most like social interactions with other dogs. She's the dog that I go to first if I'm trying to kind of test out another dog.
Brands, huh?
She gives really good kind of appropriate corrections, but she doesn't overdo it. She's not a pushover, but she won't go out of her way to kind of, tell a dog off. Yeah. So she's just really been very balanced in that way. So I really, really like her, and I'm having a lot of fun with her too.
And is this the one that we're add this trim here? Is this the one that we're talking about personally?
So that's Ebby. That's Gretchen's. That's Gretchen's dog. So that's the one that just had a litter.
Okay.
They're 5 weeks old now. And then if you go to my Facebook page, I just made Aura my Munsterlander. I made her my cover photo on there.
Okay, I'll go right there. I do.
So she's certified for breeding now too. We got all her stuff back. So we're probably going to have a litter with her this winter, if everything works out. Okay.
Oh, beautiful dog, man. So when you certify, I mean, I think it's important that people know I'm a breeder as well. There's so many tests that are available to breeders nowadays with genetic tests, and do you also do hip scans and stuff like that, elbows as well?
Yeah, so I think that's a good time to start talking about like the German kind of way of doing this stuff. So in Germany, when you hunt with a dog, when you go hunting, you're required to have a dog that can do game recovery. And so I think that's a requirement by law. And part of that process is your dog has to be certified that they can actually do the work. And so there's a series of tests that the dogs are required to do by law over there. And those performance tests are required as a prerequisite for dogs to breed. And for the folks in America that decide to kind of participate in that German system, we adhere to those same rules. So our dogs have to pass. It's like the spring after the year they were born, they have their puppy test. And then the fall after the year they were born, they have a little more advanced test. They have to be force fetched and a little bit more steady. And, there's some other stuff there too. But so there's that performance requirement, and then there's also health and temperament requirements too. So at every one of these tests, you have judges, strangers digging in the dog's mouth, checking their teeth. If you have a male dog, they're checking at testicles. They're going over their coat and all that sort of stuff. So they're really kind of getting in their face and checking them. And so they're looking to make sure that there's no sharpness towards people. And then for health tests.
Pete says no weird shit. It's good to see my guy Nate's face. Did you share this? We're live. Were you able to share it live so people could, your audience can watch it?
Didn't share it yet. No, let me go.
Yeah, make sure to share it. And everybody, while he's sharing it, make sure you guys take a second. And even if you're watching after the fact, if we're not live right now, Kelly's so funny, man. Kelly's dog just killed a bird. And I guess she left the bird in the window and her Pomeranian killed it. She came home and there's feathers everywhere. I'm sorry, man. Straight up murderers. Yeah, the cats are way worse, man. So I'm sorry. Rest in peace, little birdie. But that just goes to show you what dogs are. I mean, it's just a natural course.
Hi, George.
George.
Man, when these, and I saw Linda on here too.
Linda's on here too.
Like when some of these old head folks get on here, like the pillars of the industry, that's
training dogs longer than I've been alive.
Yeah, man, Linda has been for sure. Yeah, George too.
Yeah.
So they go through these performance tests and then they have health tests. So hips are required. Okay. In different breeds, they have certain screenings. So like in the Drahtars, they're looking for certain kinds of hemophilia. In the Munsterlanders, they're looking for something called an ectopic ureter, which I think is like the tube that connects from the kidneys to the bladder or something like that. And so these are things that they aggressively screen for, and they're very proactive about it. So it's not like these are pervasive problems within the breed. They've really done a good job of making sure that stuff isn't there. And then they even go so far as like the Drahtars, the bitch has to be covered naturally for every breeding. And then for the Munsterlanders, because in the US, the club is still really small, they have to be covered naturally for the first breeding, and then you can do AI afterwards. And so when you start having problems with the genetics, one of the first things that goes sometimes is the ability to conceive naturally, as far as I know. And so, they kind of just stay on top of that stuff. And do a really, really good job with those things. So that's really what kind of made me want these dogs, was when I was looking for my first hunting dog, I kind of didn't know where I wanted to go. And so it's as close to a sure thing that you're going to get like a solid dog, I feel like. So
is there different varieties of Drahtars? Because I've seen all the black ones too.
I'm gonna upset some people now. Probably. I love it. So a lot of folks that have German wire hairs will say the German wire hair and a Deutsch Drahttar are the same thing. And
they're not.
They technically are, but when somebody goes out of their way to say that they have a Deutsch Drahttar or a Klein Munsterlander versus saying I have a German wire hair or a small Munsterlander, they're doing it for one of two reasons. They're doing it because they test through the German system, and so they're trying to differentiate their dog, right? So the Germans want to maintain fur. Drive for furred games, like I hunt rabbits with my dogs in addition to birds. And then the second thing is they focus a lot more on the tracking and retrieving, so recovery after the shot, whereas I think American dogs the emphasis is more on the pointing and the search. So kind of the use case is a little different. And so I think the first reason is why people would say that they have one of these dogs, but they call it by the German name, is because they test through the German system. And I think the second reason is because they're trying to conflate the two intentionally, which is frustrating for people that keep the German breeds.
Well, and I got to shout out my dog Gus that I'm working with in Sun Valley, Idaho, and my dog Hank as well. I told him I'd shout him out. But that's one of my German wired hairs that I'm working with. And man, what a cool dog, dude. And he actually had a little anomaly that we found with a UTI. And so I can't tell you the importance of doing a health check, especially if we have some weird behavior that shows up, right?
Yeah.
And then Linda and George, you guys are being called the same breed.
Elitism.
Same breed. Elitism, LOL. Well, the dog people are weird, man. And you get in these little subsects, and I've said the wrong thing, and I'm like, okay, what did I say? Because I pissed some people off, and like scent work, nose work, like you got to be careful about like what the terms that you use, and dog snobs. That's what we are, man. But we're passionate about what we do. We trade our lives for what we do, and we got to remember that these niches, man, they're an inch wide and a mile deep, dude.
The only people that care about this stuff are the people that are involved with these breeds, right?
Well,
so like everybody else, they don't care.
No, but it's also, this is what people that watch this shit too. Like the people that will message me, oh, look at Doberman versus Doberman. Ask me about the pointer. Look at these guys, are George and Linda already popping in.
Well, I don't know. Do we have any like people that have Rockwilders?
Yeah, totally. Or and then we have the Spaniels, and we have like the Shepherds, the English Shepherds that Linda was talking about. And I mean, but it's also but I think that it's very important, and that's why we're talking about this stuff, because we have to persevere. This has been a part of a human history for a very long time. And setter, like, people don't realize that before gunpowder was invented, we had these dogs that would help us with bird hunting, and we would do it with nets. And the dog would point and set and allow us to throw the net without getting them all tangled up in it, right? And that's where the setter comes, the term setter. It's a very rich history that we have involved that proves a lineage that I mean, it's argued that we wouldn't be where we are as a civilization without the help of our canine friends. And this is a huge aspect of that I want to make sure is remembered, passed on, and discovered by so many people. Like you said, you catch the bug and you're done, right?
Yeah, I think it's a thing that frustrates me
falconry too.
sometimes, working in the companion dog realm and kind of being involved with rescues and things like that sometimes, is well, with training in general, is I think a lot of us that do pet dog training and are involved with folks in that sort of area, those people sometimes can forget that we wouldn't have the dogs that we have, and we wouldn't have the training that we have if it wasn't for working dogs and working dog trainers and handlers.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that we do and the dogs that we keep, you know, are the direct result of, at one point in time, there being a necessity to have a dog to do a job, not just you have the luxury of having a couch ornament that will lay on your lap while you cry about the bad day you had at work.
Yeah, the role of the dog has changed dramatically in the last 100 years.
Yeah,
and
man.
Some to a point where these breeds have been extinguished, right? Because the role has not been has not been maintained that they played, or they lost popularity, or even the breed just gets watered down throughout time because people don't understand the original purpose or the intent. And that's what's important about not just knowing the intent, but also keeping a good eye on the genetic line and making sure that things aren't going to go south and we're going to start breeding some shit into these dogs that it's going to really affect their quality of life and our relationship with them.
And you see that in some places now that run hunt tests without any actual game in the hunt test. So like, dogs are retrieving bumpers, not ducks.
Well, and also isn't it different too? Like, they have some of these reserves or whatever that actually raise the birds or something like that. So they're actually hunting with birds, but it's it's not wild birds, and how does that work? I mean, I'm curious.
So in training, we use farm raised birds a lot, because in Maryland there's not a whole lot of upland birds that you can hunt other than, I guess, woodcock, and I hear there's a couple small pockets of quail on the eastern shore. I haven't found any myself, but for training, we're usually using farm raised birds, and then people will go and hunt. I say that in air quotes, I guess, preserve birds, and I think it's good training for dogs. And if that's
all that's available, right?
If that's all that's available and a person has access to, then I think the dog doesn't care. They're just happy to go out and get to do the things that they do. But what I've really gotten into relatively quickly and pretty hard is wild bird hunting on public land and traveling to do that stuff. So probably 3 or 4 years ago, I cold called a guy that has a podcast. His name's Tyler Webster, and his podcast is called the Birds, Booze, and Buds podcast, which is the best name for a podcast ever. And so he lives in North Dakota, grew up there his whole life, and I kind of just was listening to his stuff and was like, hey man, I got a dog and I'm interested in coming out west to hunt.
Birds, Booze, and Buds.
Can you give me some pointers? And he was like, well, I'm going to Arizona in January, so why don't you just come hunt in Arizona? So I did, and I was hooked after that, man. I mean, my dog, I only had Anya at the time, so I went down there and I tried to run her every day, and literally she ran the pads off of her feet. And that's when I learned that I didn't have enough dog power to go for like a week-long hunting trip, at least not in that sort of terrain.
Okay. Yeah.
And so sometimes, that was like a thing. It was just me being stupid and overzealous, and, my dog, she didn't get, I mean, she's fine, right? But she was kind of in a bad way for a little bit, and that was my fault. But so that was my introduction to traveling hunting. The next year, I went to North Dakota. Gretchen came with me that time. We ran our dogs in the training season on wild birds up there. So in August in North Dakota, you can start running your dogs on birds for training. So you can't carry a gun, you can't shoot, but you can go out and just work them. So in that time of year, there's a prairie grouse called the Sharktail Grouse, and they're notorious for being very flighty birds. They won't let you get close to them later in the year, but early in the season they hold very, very tight, meaning you can kind of sometimes walk right up to them. On my Facebook page, there's some videos of me, damn near stepping on them before they flush, and so we went out there and hunted those birds. They're also kind of known for these popcorn flushes. So there will be 5 or 10 of these birds, and they'll pop one at a time. And it's good for working on steadiness for your dog. So we went out there and did that. And then since then we've done South Dakota. The Klein Munsterlander Breed Club puts together some hunts for their members every year. So we went to South Dakota and did one there. We've been to New Mexico. I've done Arizona every year since the first year that I went. This year, at beginning of September, I'm heading to Montana, and then October I'll be in North Dakota.
You're going to these different environments. Do you do precautions as far as like, I mean, there's husbandry stuff that we need to do with our dogs because there's just shit out there. There's cactuses, goat heads, and whatnot. But there's also venomous creatures. Do you do snake breaking and that type of stuff, or is it pretty much inherent within that dog? Or, I'm just curious.
So I feel like my dogs are a little more obedient than most of the maybe to a fault, but my dogs are a little bit more obedient in those sorts of ways than a lot of the folks that I've seen kind of out hunting with their dogs. So things like dogs running through barbed wire fences and dogs getting into porcupines and snakes and things. Like if I call my dogs to me, they're going to come. So I don't worry quite as much about that stuff, and I don't feel like I'm leaving it as up to chance, right? So we were talking about Bill Keeler before this stuff started, and so he says obedience, like insurance, is best obtained in advance of its need. And so that's kind of my approach to that. I probably should have done the rattlesnake vaccine before I left for this trip, but I think it's 2 shots a month apart the first time you do it, so I kind of missed the boat on that. Snake aversion training it seems really effective, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, we use applied punishment in our training in certain narrow contexts where it makes sense, and so
the snake bite would be quite the punishment.
Yeah, right. You know? So that's basically what they're doing, right? Is they're inhibiting interaction with that dog and a snake, and so I don't have any problems with it. I haven't done it personally, but I also think it's weird to me that people spend a lot of money on that sort of stuff. If they just understand punishment, they could probably do that themselves.
Well, and it's also, but
I guess you have to have access to the snakes.
Well, and you have time, you know, and you
Yeah.
have to have the, you know, just like people hire, it's that peace of mind that provides. And I think that goes a long way with their confidence too, right? It's just like, I get you to this place, and now, you know, as a teacher, a good teacher, we become progressively unnecessary because you take on the skills yourself and understand the why behind everything. Right. And so I want to answer Jackie's question. What kind of birds what kind of pen based?
So I think most people in most places in the country, if they're training their dog on pen raised birds, they're generally using 2 kinds of birds. And so the first is chucker. Okay. So that's a partridge species, I think, but they're an upland bird species that you can hunt wild in certain areas of the country, but I think they're pretty easy to raise as pen raised birds. So I think that's what most people use. The problem with chucker is that if they're immature or they're not flight conditioned, then they don't fly very well. And so you have to use check cords in training a lot more. You have to have a lot better control of your training setups. Because if you're trying to get dogs to point, the worst thing to do is let them catch a bunch of birds. They'll turn into flushers very quickly. And then the second type of bird that I think is really important and helpful for folks to have access to, especially for early work with dogs where you're trying to just get them to be staunch. What I mean for that is they will point a bird and wait until you approach and flush the bird. So kind of like the initial part of that series of steady to wing shot and fall. You want pigeons. So in particular, wild pigeons, if you can find somebody that catches them, So they're good because once they leave the ground, they're not going to land on the ground. Josh says that pen raised chukar always fly way better than quail, and that's true, but they still fly like shit compared to wild pigeons. And yeah, I haven't had good luck with pen raised quail either around here. And different bird suppliers will do different stuff. Some of them just feed the birds, and that can kind of habituate them the same way that deer and other wildlife can get habituated if people show up and then food starts raining from the sky. That's not really what you want. You want birds that are trying to get away from people and away from dogs.
Now, oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Now, do you do any type of imprinting for your puppies right now with the birds that you have? Or do you have the birds by them? Do you do a flirt poll to test out the point?
Yeah. So so some of the stuff you're asking me, Gretchen would really be better answering.
Okay.
So I will
defer to her.
No, I'll summarize, and then she'll probably yell at me for getting stuff wrong.
Okay.
She won't yell at me, but she'll be like, "You're dumb. That was not correct." So Gretchen did early neurological stimulation with the dogs, which is like the that Army super dog stuff. She like touches their feet with a Q-tip, and there's a bunch of different holds, and you put them on like a cold surface, and so it's ENS. I think a lot of good breeders do that kind of stuff now. But the other thing that she did was early scent introduction. And I think that that's less about the particular scent you're introducing the dog to and more about just introducing them to novelty when they're very, very, very young. But because these are hunting dogs, she did kind of do a lot of game. So they had early scent introduction to rabbits and pheasant, woodcock.
What
chukar,
do you use for scent?
right?
Do you actually use a piece of the bird for a wing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, dude, I got an upright freezer that's just full of dead animals. I mean, when you train hunting dogs, especially versatile hunting dogs, and especially the German tested versatile hunting dogs, you have to have a freezer full of ducks and chukar and rabbits and raccoons and foxes and all sorts of stuff. So I mean, I got a bunch of shit in there, and
makes sense. I mean, that's what they're going after. That's what we want them to be, ignited on. And had a client's dog hit a barbed wire fence in South Dakota on the first day. You know what, man? I was so we do these Clubhouse app, which is this audio only app, and I have this dog room where I have these dog professionals come on, and I said, what are some things that people don't really know about that they can bring, that will help their dogs? And one of the vet techs came on and said, skin stapler.
I yeah, and I see a lot of guys using those, but there's a guy, God.
And it's not dark or anything because this shit happens, man. People are out there in the field and like dive in, or the dogs are out in the field and they dive in and will cut themselves open and for an emergency, I mean, to get them to the vet, like piecing them up together or something. But what were you saying, Nate?
There's a guy whose name is escaping me right now, and Warner Glenn. It's not escaping me. I just remembered it. So that guy is in his 80s, I think. He's a dry ground lion hunter in Arizona. So he has a bunch of hounds that he hunts lions with, and the advice that I got secondhand, it wasn't from him directly, but from folks that learned it from him, is to carry safety pins with you instead of to carry safety pins with you instead of a skin stapler. And the reason for that is, like, some of the places that I hunt, we might hike 5 miles to get to the place where we're going to start getting into birds. And so if my dog gets torn up back there, just the walk back, they're going to get dirt and a bunch of crap in that wound, and probably in the process of getting the wound, that happens. And so if you staple them shut, sometimes you're trapping in bacteria and other stuff. So if you safety pin that closed, you're leaving enough holes there that it can kind of drain still. And so that was kind of the recommendation that I got. So I do keep a stapler with me, but I keep safety pins too for that reason. And that dude's been doing this stuff way longer than I have, so I'll trust what he says.
Well, and it makes sense too. I mean, and Jackie says that they use pen raised pheasants and Sonials, I guess, and Baltimore Sky Rat
Spaniels, I think is what she was saying. Yeah, and
on
so
Spaniels.
so
okay. On
when so like NAVDA, which is another organization that we work with, right? That's the kind of American versatile hunting dog organization. In their puppy test, they do a pheasant track instead of the rabbit track from the German test. And
I know that's what I've grew up hunting was pheasants here in Idaho.
yeah, but they run so much that it's kind of, I think if you're trying to do
And
pointing
quail.
work, it's harder to get the early pointing work done on pheasants because they run so much compared to the other birds we talked about.
That freeze, you know. And then
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen puppies point at these chickens too that I have here, man. They're just it's baked into them, man. I'm just like, hey,
Yeah.
check it. And the dog's just like, I don't know what's going on, but I know I gotta do this. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
genetics, man. And it's so cool. I mean, it's just to see, like, does Gretch have a video of the puppies by chance pointing? Do you know?
They're still so young, man.
Oh, are they?
That kind of stuff.
I'm gonna find one just so I can illustrate.
Sure.
I don't know whose it is, but we're gonna find a puppy that's pointing just so you guys can see.
If you want to see like young puppies, you should probably look for like English pointers or maybe an English setter. Like some of these dogs that are more like pure pointing breeds, I think they tend to point earlier.
Well, here, I'm just going to put this ad to stream. We're going to see it all together for the first time. This is a pointer litter. So
there you go. Yeah.
And this is the wing. Look at that. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. There's the one dude that... So is this kind of what Gretchen does? Is this?
I mean, so we haven't done any of this stuff yet. I think the puppies that we have right now are still pretty young, and I think the wing on the string thing is.
I can see some problems with it. I can see it being a little bit like I would take one dog at a time first and foremost.
Yeah, so like that kind of stuff, and then I think the other thing that's happening is like this is sight pointing, right? And so you really want your dog pointing. You want them pointing scent, not
good
sight.
Point, man. Good point.
So
good point on the pointing.
So I think everybody has different opinions about that kind of stuff, but
well, it makes sense, man. And that's one of the first things that we want these dogs doing, man, is knowing that this God-given thing that they have is a lot different than what we have here, and we automatically teach them to use their eyes because that's what we use, right? And just like when we do man trailing or these exercises where we go and hide from our dog, let your dog find you. Don't use your voice. Don't help your dog out. Let them, because when they run by you the first 5 times, they're using their eyes. Right. But then when they start to realize that they have this nose, and you're going to find out that it's going to lead them right to you. And then once they start to use that again and again, right. And so that's where it makes perfect sense that you don't want this puppy to look and start using their eyes to look at this thing. So I would assume that we would scent it or make it something that we would put in a scent box or something that would be obscuring it where the dog uses that nose, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes to get them started, you'll use sight.
Go. Gretchen's here, but no pointing up. But Puppy Archer found a rabbit today that's bigger than him, carried it away. So Gretch, I'm gonna do, since you're not here, we're just gonna do your own one. So if you can come in, she has her own. I mean, she has an invite that I sent you. So if you click that invite, you'll come in here with us, Gretchen. But I don't think that she has a good signal. But if you don't join us, and we'll do your own where we can talk about what you do as well, because I want to hear from you. But I'm just like, I love to nerd out about this stuff, man. And not only that, I'm interested in doing this myself as I get older, right? And like as a dog trainer and as the obedience work that I have, but I'm also just really good at getting in that dog's head. And I can see like this being something that is really brings a really fulfilling life to that dog. It hits all the buttons, man. The scent, it burns them out as far as that energy is concerned. It gives them a purpose. It gives them value in the pack unit. And not only that, but they bring stuff that is consumed by the pack. So now they are contributing. There's just so many things that this hits on that it just makes me so happy. That's why I love this stuff, man.
What I really like about just dog training in general, and what I'm really into is kind of trying to find these kind of common threads and these exercises, these techniques, these concepts that are like ubiquitous across all different disciplines of dog training. So you see, like if you went to Napopo school, right? And so you've been exposed to a lot of bite sport stuff, even if you're not doing a ton of it yourself. I know you're friends with John Sparks and all that sort of stuff. And so the way that they might agitate a dog to get them sort of in drive when they're first starting things like bite work and stuff like that, you'll see a lot of hunting dog guys do the same sort of stuff to initiate the sort of contact with birds. So I might tease a dog with a bird, and then
negative reinforcement.
So I'm showing it to them. I'm letting them almost get it. They get really frustrated about it. And then I'll throw it somewhere that they can't see it. And then they have to go hunt. Right. And so then they have to start using all these different senses to go find those things. In the German system and NAVDA, one of the biggest, kind of most valued and heavily weighted as far as scoring goes in both systems, exercise that you do is duck search, which is basically you're releasing a dog into water that has a lot of dense cover, and you're expecting them to track on the water and find a duck. And this is supposed to approximate you like shooting a bird, crippling it, and then the dog having to just go find it and recover it because you have no idea where it went. And so that exercise is really heavily weighted in the scoring in both systems. And that is an exercise that you develop pretty much exclusively by just trying to tap into the dog's drive. And the biggest thing I see people have trouble with is being able to get their dog to enter water when they didn't see something fall and when there's no sort of scent immediately available to them. And so a lot of that for me is just building enough frustration that the dog is willing to kind of enter the water, and then kind of showing them that behavior is what creates reward first. And then eventually, making them just work harder and harder before they produce that reward. So when
the seeking behavior, that's what we're talking about. Seeking it out. Even if you don't smell it, it's still there somewhere. And the harder you work, you will find it. And then once you do find it, then it's going to be that much more rewarding because you worked through the struggle to build your own confidence, right? And that's same for a dog, right?
Yeah. So like pre-force fetch, when we're doing this stuff with young puppies, we'll tease them a little bit, like shake it in front of their face. Thank you, George. Yeah, I do remember that conversation. And George told me I couldn't have a really good hunting dog that was also like my demo dog for companion dog training. And I was like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And guess what I didn't do? So, it's like some of this stuff, you have to let them be a little bit, not let them be wild, but they have to have a lot of independence.
You respect who they are, man. You respect who they are. And like that's where, like, even like Dr. Ravi Iyer says, he says, like, training my working dog is not the same as training dogs.
Yes.
And see how, I agree. See how everybody's like, yes, like even immediately I was like, yes, absolutely.
I want to finish the thought that I had, but I'll tell some stories about that with my dogs, because a lot of the experience that I have, first of all, I'm very new to all this stuff. So everything I'm saying is stuff that other people have taught me and told me. It's not stuff that I came up with or discovered myself. Right. So, but what I was saying was, working on that duck search exercise with young puppies, we get them frustrated, show them something, and just throw it in the water. We do marks and sight chases first, and then eventually we kind of like tease them with it, and then move them out of the way while we drop it in the water, and then release them, and they're kind of going on faith, right? So they're gambling there, right, a little bit. And then when we do force fetch, then we start doing things like, I will force you into the water with the e-collar, so I'm pushing you into the water, and then I'll throw a duck over your head so it lands in front of you. Right. And so I'm articulating that way because I'm trying to explain, like, that's, to me, Napopo as best as I understand it. Right. As I'm like, I'm forcing the dog to a reward. And well, so
it's also like the understanding and like the pushing, but also it's like, the push is not going to devastate this animal. And that's the point, right? It actually is going to cause them to be like, oh shit, here we go. Like we're cooking with gasoline now. We're actually like, this is what I expect, and it actually drives them. It causes them to work it causes them to work harder.
And that's a really good point, because if I have a criticism of my time in hunting dogs so far, it's that I think that the training is behind in terms of
Mm.
progressiveness.
You work with any flushers by chance?
Yeah, we have some like lab guys that come and train with us. I don't know if they
Frickin' labs
count
man.
as or I'm sorry, Chesapeake Bay Retrievers are the dogs that have been.
Oh, those these are meat.
lately.
Those Chessies can be meatheads too.
Okay.
Okay.
Chessies are for people who couldn't decide if they wanted a lab or a pit bull.
Dude, I've had it's either it goes either way. I've had the angels, and then I've had a couple of them where I'm like, holy shit, this dog is serious business.
You talking about Chessies or pit bulls? Because yes,
no,
to both.
Both.
Right.
Yes to both. Yeah, but this one Chessie I had, I'm looking at her and she's looking at me like, I wish you would, motherfucker. And I was just like, okay, dude, like I see you. I see you wanting to eat me right now, and I am going to evaluate this approach. And but it was a very eye-opening experience for this. Like, she was tough as nails, pit bull.
Yes.
Tough as nails, and this dog just did not. She just wasn't. She was no joke, man. What's Trinda here? What's Linda here say? Training a working dog is in direct opposition to pet dog training. Boom. What a working dog handler wants is the same things pet dog owner complains about, and that's where I say, like, it's basically in the working dog world, go go go. In the pet dog world, it's stop stop stop, man. And I just don't like that stop aspect, because there's a reason why this dog wants to go go go, and I don't want to staunch that. I want to find a way that we can fulfill both ends of the spectrum by also understanding the wants and needs of this individual dog. And a lot of these dogs, dude, they're just looking at dogs, like you said, on your couch, or a couch, what did you say, a couch decoration,
couch ornament,
ornament, right?
But so that's true, but there's so much that like we can learn from working dog applications that applies to the pet dog stuff that we're doing. And like the one that immediately comes to mind is drive switching, right? And so like if you I think Jerry Bradshaw probably has one of the best Patreon accounts for people that want to learn about dog training. He's the guy that runs Tar Heel Canine.
Jerry.
Yeah, and so he's posted some videos on this where he's talking about getting a dog to switch between prey and defense, right? And so he's kind of like he's rewarding the dog, engaging when they're in defense by then the decoy changes states, right, and kind of starts trying to get away, and that elicits prey drive. And he kind of articulates that the dog's in a really confident state of mind when they're in prey drive, and in defense not so much. And then so that concept of like being able to kind of switch drives and channel drives, I think, is helpful for me. Like the way that he articulated that was helpful for me in understanding some trouble that I'm having with my dogs in some of the steadiness work that I'm trying to do, where they're out there searching, right? They establish point, that's all prey driven behavior. And then from that point, when I walk in and then flush the bird and shoot, I'm asking them to switch to social drive. We're switching from prey-driven behavior to obedience, which occurs in social drive. And so trying to get them to switch more easily there is a thing that I'm having trouble with in my working dogs. But then this is also stuff that our clients' dogs have trouble with as well, right? So they walk around a corner and they're met face-to-face with another dog, and then that kind of pushes them into defense. Maybe they've had bad experiences with other dogs, they're reactive, those sorts of things. And so how do I get them to kind of switch back into social drive, to calm back down? And so practicing exercises where we do drive switching in controlled scenarios, I think, can really help that happen better when they encounter those things in real life.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we're all essentially trying to figure out, that magic, key of how do we get this dog? Because when that dog switches that drive, we're basically essentially switching that dog from, like you say, it's a defensive to, well, not necessarily prey, but maybe a social, right? In some aspects where they're not like chasing it, like get the fuck out and get out of here. Like I could see that as being like, rrr, rrr, rrr. And then they're like, oh, it's working. Yeah, go. Like, and push, right? But then there's times that it's like, we just want to make that switch of knowing that you're safe, dude. And like, because you can see it when a dog's in defensive and then they realize, oh, I know this person. Immediately that dog switches to a freaking happy, or like, and sometimes a little bit manic. right? But as long as we settle that energy down and for a few minutes, we can see that switch is very, very obvious. And when we have to realize too is that when their dog's in a big defensive drive, that's a lot of stress too, right? And that's what people don't like and need to realize. People make crappy personal decisions when it comes to pet selection. Yes.
And so what Linda's alluding here to is another thing that really drew me to the German kind of breeding systems, because the dogs that we breed and the dogs that I own, if you don't have a valid hunting license, you can't buy one. And so it's just kind of an extra layer of assurance that the dogs are going to homes that are going to do the stuff that dog was bred to do. And that doesn't always work out, and everybody kind of has different opinions of what that means, right? So like you could be a hunter and hunt 4 times in a season, or you could be like my friend Tyler that I just mentioned earlier, who I think he probably hunts 100 and some days every season. I mean, just his job and his lifestyle is set up to do that.
Right. I know this guy that I watch, a python hunter. You ever watch that guy down in?
Yeah, he's got a Dratar.
Yeah, that's why I watch him, bro. And that's why. But his Dratar is super dark. That's what I was saying. Like his isn't. Yeah. But he calls his a Belgian Dratar. No. So is there a Dutch? Is there a German and there's a Belgian like line?
Dude, I don't know. But that guy has so Python Cowboy. That guy has a dog from the sea litter of Grizzly Creek. Grizzly Creek is a Dratar kennel.
Is the name of that dog. I know that.
Heather Prunty is the breeder from Grizzly Creek. She produces really nice dogs. I've met her. Actually, I tested my dog Aura, my Munsterlander, at the same HZP. She was testing one of her dogs. Really nice lady, produces really, really good dogs. And hunts her ass off, man.
There he is. So you see how dark he is? Maybe that's just the coloring of that particular dog there, man. But he seemed pretty dark to me. Here, and this guy blasts. He takes out invasive species. This guy's going to shoot this iguana. A little parental. You gotta blur it out or you get demonetized. But do you see how he is? Do you see how dark he is? Here, let me pause.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't speak to like the German wire hair breed in general, but in Dratars, you're allowed to have 3 colors. You're allowed to have brown. You're allowed to have Braunschimmel, which is like brown roan. And you're allowed to have
it definitely has roan down here. I can see the little
you're allowed to have Schwarzschimmel, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, which is what this dog is, which is a black roan.
He's got brown nose right here.
And so they try to keep the dogs with black coats and brown coats to a certain percentage, because they are trying to kind of keep that brown and white sort of ticked and patched coat as the predominant. And I think it's recessive, so it's like harder to keep. So is the wire hair, by the way. So in those litters, you'll see sometimes, like my Dratar is pretty slick. I mean, she looks like a short hair unless you get really up close, and she's got like a little bit of peach fuzz.
I saw that.
And then other dogs in her litter were pretty woolly. And then there's some that have what I think most people would consider like the correct coat, which is a tight, very harsh coat, and then they have good furnishings, which means they have a lot of beard, some eyebrows and stuff, which kind of just keeps junk out of their face.
Well, you can see just in this little picture right here, we got
so like that the one that's up on the right now, that kind of bigger picture to the right, like to me that's not really an ideal coat. And then if you look at some of these other ones, like that kind of tight coat, if you touch that coat and it felt like
look at this one. That one's freaking really tight.
Yeah, and so what they want is a lot of density. It is a double coat, and so you have these very harsh like guard hairs, and then they do have an undercoat that's kind of downy.
Very cool, man.
That's what you're looking at. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
So with retriever, so force fetch. I mean, there's an ear methodology where you hold the ear, hold it, and let it go, or is that kind of where you're at, or you do? I've learned it with the clicker as well. And
the unforced force fetch.
The unforced force fetch, but also do you do different variety of objects? Do you stick with just foul?
So
yeah, I have so many questions, dude.
so I've learned a bunch of different ways from a bunch of different people. My dogs, I've generally followed the method that's outlined in the Keeler method of open obedience. And that's kind of like, that's my training base, is Keeler method. And so that uses ear pinch, and it teaches the reach first, and then it teaches hold after that, and then it sort of teaches the pick up off the ground, and then kind of starts putting all the pieces together. It uses one object, and I think the kind of logic for that is, if you're going to have what Keeler referred to as points of contention, so places where you're kind of fighting the dog a little bit. The dog is saying, I don't want to do this. And you say, sorry, bub, but you have to.
It must.
That all that sort of bad, potentially negative emotions towards an object are limited to something that you're never going to ask the dog to retrieve again. So like, I'm not going to ask my dog to run around picking up wooden dowels ever after our core process is done. And so once the dog understands it, because all learning is preceded by confusion, right? Like, you have to figure out what you need to do before.
Right. It's like a part of the process, part of the messy middle.
So in that process, and you got to remember too, like the way that the Keeler stuff is written, it's for people that are not dog trainers to be able to get like,
in the 40s too,
results,
or the 50s, right?
Yeah, but to get results that meet an objective standard, right, and to try to get as many people to be able to do that as possible. And so there is a lot, as much criticism as that methodology gets, there's a lot of guarding against people doing stupid shit and ruining their dog. I mean, it really, like, if you really pay attention and follow it the way you're supposed to, it's very fair and it's very methodical.
Better believe it.
And so that's the process that I'm most used to, but I always overlay e-collar afterwards, because we have to do stuff at distance in the work that we're doing. And so I'll layer e-collar over it afterwards. The NAVDA chapter that I work with, they sort of like break it down into just 3 phases, right? Like, your dog has to they have to learn the fetch, going out and picking something up, and they have to learn the hold, which is holding onto something in their mouth, and then obviously eventually moving around with that stuff in their mouth. And so they kind of simplify the process a little bit, and they do teach that you do hold first, and you do that with a bunch of different objects. And that's, it's definitely, it works, and that's how the majority of folks in the NAVDA chapter I train with do it. What I find is there's not as much margin for error there. And so what I would like to see people do, if they're going to do it that way, is to use marker training and to place objects in the dog's mouth when they're holding it calmly. They can mark and reward the dog, and then they can kind of get the dog in a place where I feel like they understand conceptually what they're being asked to do a little bit better before the force starts being applied. In Keeler method, the force starts being applied immediately, but you're cutting that overall behavior into such small slices that I don't think it's difficult for the dogs to get it quickly.
Well, the manners minder is a marker, like, except for the marker that goes that way. The clicker is a marker that come to me. Manners minder, which is now called a treat and train, which I have one sitting right here next to me. That's how much we use these freaking things, man. So it speeds it up. As
I'm sitting here hoping that Bart and Michael will decide that they're not completely done with Napopo schools.
They're not.
Just kind of
they're not.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, you're going to be okay. And not only that, but I got you too, man. Like, if you ever need, or because I am gold. Hey, look at, dude, gold graduate.
I see you.
Cool. but I also speak with Bart, like, especially old Napopo is Keeler. Like, and I speak with Tony, right?
With different tools, yeah. And I think with more emphasis on the inductive side of things. But again, if you follow Keeler properly, especially if you learn it from Tony, like, he cares very deeply about making sure the dog understands things and kind of reading the individual dog and working the dog in front of you. And I think that stuff for novices gets missed a lot. Yeah. And so if you're seeing somebody, which I'm sure it's true with any training, but if you see somebody doing something poorly, I just hope that you don't leave thinking that that's a good representation of the method, right? But so what I was getting at was I
then...
just bought all of Hans Verbruggen's, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, his videos for how he kind of teaches a lot of that stuff. So I'm looking at the unforced force fetch, and that really is kind of what I do mostly, right? So I guess I'm doing old Nipopo, in the sense that I kind of do the keeler work, but I do use marker training involved in that too.
Dude,
who's coming up right now?
I
thought you had a dog that was coming up here.
She is. I was going to show you because I actually took her through the school, right? And then I can give her stuff. Hey, what do you want? She just woke up, but of course.
I'd be a little bothered if you're asking me to do a bunch of shit right after I went.
If I had my treats, dude, if I had like something that she was like dog money or whatever, I mean, she'll do it because I tell her that she absolutely there, hold, right, whoops, hold, good, release, good girl, thank you. I'll give you a big treat later, but that's it. It's like but if I woke her up with like a clicker or one of these things, if I tooted this treat and train, man, she would have been like boom, boom, right here in me, and just been like, but you can see that she's just like, all right, if I must. but that's, what I think that, and that's why I talk about, dude. I think Keeler and Napopo, if I had these as a new trainer,
I think if somebody wanted to if somebody really wanted to hit the ground running and just be able to really get results, and I don't mean like the you're better at editing video than you are at actually working dogs kind of results that I think we see a whole lot of.
Yes.
I think that those are the places where you'll get the most mileage, right? Like if you're going to pay somebody to teach you how to do stuff and you're not going to go do an apprenticeship or go to like a school like National National Canine or Star Mark or Tar Heel or someplace like that, then I think that those are kind of the best places to go. The biggest difference between Napopo and Keeler is what, $14,500 or something like that. Probably.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. Napopo is definitely, but it's also some of the best in the world, and it's also,
I agree.
Some of the best dogs in the world too, and that's where I like just to be part of this network is amazing. And not only that, but I respect Michael and Bart, and what they put together, because it helps dogs and it helps people understand them, including myself. There's
a bit more of especially with and again, I'm speaking as a relatively uninformed person because I can only go by the video that I watch and things like that, right? Having not gone through the school, but especially with new Napopo, I think there's also a lot of saving people from themselves. So it kind of guards against people pushing the dog faster than they should or doing things that are not supposed to do before they have any business doing them. And that was what I was saying before about the hunting dog stuff. Is I see a lot of times people adding pressure to a dog that's confused and for some reason thinking that that's going to make the situation better.
Push them to the right avenue instead of making them more confused, right? And it's just seems.
And so when you do stuff like free shaping or luring or even just being very clear and using negative reinforcement for like physically molding the dog into positions, I think what you're guaranteeing is that the dog has some level of understanding before you apply a truly like aversive level of compulsion. John is the current president of the Klein Munsterlander
fantastic
organization.
We were just giving your dogs the props that they deserve, but also given the job that they do, right? The highlighting the job that they do, and keep it up, John. Like I appreciate people that keep the lineage alive, and just know that you're appreciated even from people that are not even in the sport. Right, and here's I think his site is Kale, and but beautiful dogs, beautiful temperament, and not only that, but it's funny that John Brinkley was just recommending these dogs to the Munsterlander. As far as, I mean, I like the small power pack dogs, but I also like utility dogs. I like dogs that will help me, and like I said, man, this hits so many of those buttons for that dog to be fulfilled, dude. The seeking, the scent. The bringing back resources that will be consumed, so they're contributing. They're the pack unit traveling together. There's so much, man.
Dude,
so
it's really
the lineage, the history of people with these dogs, like all the way back from, this was one of the herding breeds, and these hunting breeds are what's argued that has took us from a nomadic to a to a pastoral existence as a society, right?
when I think of like my life with dogs, because I had dogs growing up and I had dogs before I started getting into this hunting dog stuff. But when I think of like just my time as a trainer and my life with dogs, there's like a couple just points in time that really stick out to me. And the first was when I met Dave Cochran. So I had a foster pit mix that I was just really having a lot of trouble getting him to be anything that would resemble a dog that anybody would want. And Dave was like, well, if you're willing to meet me at 7 a.m. on Sundays in a park in Baltimore City, then I'll go ahead and help you out. And so, that made a big difference. And that was my introduction to Keeler. And then through him, I eventually met Linda, which is like, if you want to greatly increase your ability to just be able to work with dogs, man. And in particular, I think like leash handling, defensive leash handling. I spent a good amount of time when I was like apprenticing with her, pulling German shepherds off of my back. Yeah. So like, yeah, man, she had some gnarly clients. Her proposition to me was, I can outsmart them, but I can't outmaneuver them anymore. So if you come, I'll teach you how to do this stuff, and you can be like the arms and legs basically, and I'll tell you what to do. And so I learned a ton from her. The 95% of what we do is stuff that I learned from Linda.
She's listening.
And then like I remember I was working up this big blue pit.
95% of what you've learned.
Yeah, man.
I want to highlight that really quick, man. That's a pretty big. It's a pretty big amount to learn from somebody, man.
And so I remember there was one day when I was working with this blue pit mix thing, and I did something, and I had the thought at the same time she said it, and what she said to me was, "You shouldn't have done that." And this dog was like not very happy with just me being anywhere near him. And so like I just remember that being, I was very proud of myself that I knew that I fucked up at the same time Linda told me that I fucked up. So that meant I was really starting to learn stuff. So that was the second one. And then the last one was getting Anya, of course, but then meeting my friend Tyler and like him inviting me on my first like trip, because it's very intimidating to travel to a place you've never been before, and like to go try to do your own, and to have somebody kind of like mentor me through that. It really cuts the learning curve. And then that really changed my life, like to the point where now I'm trying
bird hunting. You're talking about your first bird
man
hunt? Okay.
Yeah. And so just kind of starting to really
everything cool, that I'm, dude. I remember when you did that too, by the way.
Yeah, everything I'm doing now is to just try to be able to be able to spend as much time as I can doing that sort of stuff. So like I'm shifting our dog training business to try to, whether I'm actually training like versatile dogs or bird dogs or not is not really here nor there, but just like trying to free up time in the fall. And like I let my clients know that stuff's going to get a little slim during that time, because my priority during that time is not them. It's going and following my dogs around chasing birds and stuff. And so dude, I just really like it.
It's giving me tinglies, dude. That's the only thing.
It's great.
I've just got like these tinglies of like, I want to do that.
It's fun. Yeah.
Especially really here, wherever, so you said that your dog did not have the stamina for the first hunt. What happened?
No, she had plenty of stamina. So she literally wore the pads off her feet. So when you go hunt in Arizona, in Arizona, like where we were you're basically in one of two places. You're kind of in the mountains, which is really rocky. It's basically like you're walking on mountains and hillsides that are covered in grapefruit-sized rocks. So you basically just roll your ankles for 10 or 12 miles a day, looking for Mearns quail. And then you can hunt the desert more, where you're looking for like Gambel's quail, scaled quail, out where we were. And so that stuff is like this weird red, like lava rock kind of stuff. And it just tears the dog's feet up to shreds. So I didn't have boots for my dogs the first year I went out there, and I learned my lesson. They sell like Gun Dog Supply sells these boots called Lewis dog boots. They're rubber boots that you literally duct tape onto the dog's feet so that they don't come off. And they, man, they're the best thing for protecting a dog's feet. And I guess like if you lived out there and you ran your dogs on that terrain every day, their feet would get toughened up to that. But out here, they're mostly running on, those things. They're mostly running, my dogs run on grass and like gravel most of the time, and it's just not the same thing. Right. So
we're going to show you how to boot.
So you actually have to freaking boot them up.
I do it.
Yeah, man.
Now.
Oh, they actually put it on before.
Everything is nice and loose.
So that duct tape is wrapped
the blood supply,
inside out.
You can end up hurting your dog.
And it's nice and loose, they said.
All right, now we pop the boots
put it on tight, you'll hurt your dog. That's what he just said. You guys can't hear it, but so cool, man.
And then you like stick it there, and then you wrap duct tape around the other way. So you have like tape sticking to tape, and then you have the inside out tape on the inside, and then you have outside in tape on.
How many hunts do you use these for?
Oh, so when I'm in Arizona, I boot my dogs on every run now, and they will still get their feet torn up even with those boots on, just because they're running so much. I mean, if I walk 5 miles, my dogs are doing 15 usually.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. They're somewhere between 2 and 3 times the distance that I do. And
so what we're doing here,
people had bigger running dogs,
is putting the boots on. And now these.
So do you do anything for like in case you have to carry your dog out, or we get an injury, or any of that kind of stuff?
I used to carry this. It was like a sling that packed down real small, and so you can kind of put your dog in that and then kind of wear them like a backpack to carry them out. Now I have a vest by a company called Final Rise. The guy that makes them is, I think, predominantly a chucker hunter, seems like to me. But it's an American company. Guy was like making these things out of his garage, basically, I think, and now he's grown enough that he's moved into a warehouse. But his vest, you can like loosen up the back of it where you would be putting your birds that you shot.
Oh yeah, you
can loosen it up, and you can actually stick your dog in the vest and carry them kind of the same way. Like you can sling your dog to your back. And then I carry stuff like a little first aid kit. I carry Benadryl. I carry cutters in case you kind of find snares. Some rope if you run into like conibear traps, which are like the body lock traps that trappers will use sometimes. So
Final Rise gear is
you got to
shit. So let me put a Final Rise gear here while we're talking about it, you guys, so we can give them a shout out. Final Rise gear. There we go. Oh man, it looks like the shit. Look at this, you guys. Built for the uplands. Okay, so uplands, and then we have. So what are there? Are we? So we have uplands. Do we have lowlands? Since we have uplands, do we have low?
So when they talk about upland hunting, they basically mean you're going to stay dry, kind of, sort of, right? So it's like hunting. It's hunting all of the. I think the term is gallinaceous birds, which means they're pear-shaped, ground nesting birds.
Like quail.
So when people are talking about upland bird hunting, that's what they're talking about. When I say upland hunting, I'm also talking about furred game. Like I've gone on bird hunts where I didn't find many birds, but there were rabbits all over the place. And because I have German dogs who like fur and like hunting rabbits, then
that's what I got here.
A bad day of bird hunting can turn into a good day of rabbit hunting real fast, especially in places like Arizona.
What about dogs with turkeys?
Do
they do dogs with turkeys?
There are turkey hunting dogs specifically, and these German versatiles, man, they'll hunt any damn thing you want, like that dog you just saw hunting iguanas. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yep. And so that's upland hunting, and then we do hunt waterfowl with our dogs too. So they'll retrieve ducks, and they're very good water dogs. And then the other thing that our dogs are kind of known for doing is blood tracking.
Here's a good little first aid kit that they have here for you guys.
Yeah, there you go.
That's an excellent little thing here. I might have to call these guys and just chat with them, see what they're all about, because if they're making good stuff for good dogs, So blood tracking, and you know what? I actually have a friend of mine in Michigan that hires people for blood tracking, and that's what they actually. That's how I met this guy. as he wanted to know if I knew anybody with a good bloodhound to help them with their deer hunt.
Yeah. So these dogs are good at blood tracking too. And then a buddy of mine, Logan, he's I think he's in Georgia.
Forgot to mention
Like,
the better side. Gretchen is outstanding and bringing her first litter. New owners, check them out. Yep. And we're gonna have, so Gretchen was not able to join us, but she's gonna be on another separate live stream. Her name's in the title, and that's all good. Nate, do you have a new sidekick?
I don't. So they made so the guy from Final Rise made a kind of another product that is like a shallower, lighter weight belt that's good for like training, dove hunting, and then I guess if you were going to do any kind of stuff where you're shooting smaller birds, then you'll
There's a sidekick, as it says.
yeah. So it looks neat. I haven't bought one yet. That vest is the vest I have. The regular Final Rise vest is pretty big, but again, sometimes like when I'm hunting some of these places, like if you shoot a decent amount of birds, and then especially because like I'm shooting a lot of rabbits when I see them, and like jackrabbits. I mean, some of those are really, really big.
They fall turkey hunts with the German wire hair pointer. It says so.
Cool, that's awesome.
He's got it in his profile picture too.
But so I need a bigger capacity vest.
Tecos for blood tracking. Well, I see that they have little things for your drink too, man. So buy one. It's a 10 for 10 for training. So
okay.
Is that the best that Josh? It looks like. Are you wearing that in the profile picture here with your dog?
Yeah, I think that is it. Yeah.
And what kind of dog do you got, Josh? If you don't mind me.
He has a Brack, I think. He has a French pointing dog, and then I think he has a lab too now.
That is it. Yep, I am actually. Cool. Yeah, I know that his lab. And then cool, man. And then so upland and then water. What were you saying? So the upland is dry, and then for the nesting birds, and then the water. Now, I mean, what goes into the water? I mean, that's a whole other set of training. And do we ever have dogs that are water phobic, or how do you deal with that? How do you deal with dogs that won't come back that are in the frickin' water? That's what
a lot of that stuff is just it's obedience to me, and like water introductions for dogs is important, and I think you do a lot of that stuff the same way that you do most other things. Like if you want your dog into stuff and you're working with an environment or some sort of stimulus that you think might potentially be bothersome to the dog, then I think kind of getting them in drive and really excited about something is a good way to make them kind of forget all about that. And so with me, I haven't had too much trouble. Like if my dog will chase, a bird on land a couple times or something like that, then I can usually tease them with it, throw it in the water, and then they'll jump right in the water and go after it. I just don't try to force it. Like most of these dogs have the genetics, and so if I just kind of trust my process and know that they'll wake up when they're supposed to, then I'll usually be fine.
Yeah, it's all about that structure, but it's also about letting them know, hey, look, man, there's some pitfalls here that I've actually thought of, and I've got it taken care of, man. So if you try to go this way, then this will happen,
But you do see people kind of mess it up sometimes, though. Like if their e-collar training is not good and they're trying to use force in the water, and the dog is kind of, I guess the dog forms like a superstitious association. I don't know. They think like this lily pad over here just bit them. They don't know it's because they're not taking a line.
We've actually done this, man, where we've actually taken all these different collars and put them underwater and felt it, and taken them out of water and felt it. I've taken every single collar they've made. I felt it as much as it goes, in water, out of water, and it's fucking crazy how much more it goes when it's wet. Like with some of these collars. Yeah, dude, try it. Like there is an overstimulation that happens or something. Like it's just, I don't know. It's just a weird thing that happens, and it happens to be an involuntary overstim. And but we'll see. I mean, I've done it.
I guess I don't find myself using the collar in the water a whole lot. Like I'm usually using the collar when I'm first trying to push a dog into the water, and then I'm using the collar a little bit sometimes to clean up manner of retrieve when they're coming out of the water. So like a lot of dogs want to shake when they come out of the water, or they want to place a duck down on the water, and I'm usually using it to enforce recall. there to kind of just get them focused on hurrying up and getting back to me instead of thinking about all that other stuff.
Well, the collar needs to be very properly introduced. Like that's what I think people just get too. They get too, I don't know, lenient with where they think the application is important, where it's not even understood in the first place, right? And then they crank it up and be like, come back to me, where the dog is actually, it becomes like almost, it switches that drive to, I mean, and this is just like talking out like stream of consciousness, like it almost switches it to almost a defensive drive for the I don't know, I gotta think about it and start to really, and see it too. Like if I can see it, then I'm like, oh, right there's where he went wrong. That dog doesn't, is not getting it or whatever, right?
I have a website called gundogworkshop.com that I'm kind of trying. It's a place where I'm trying to organize my thoughts. I think sometimes when I write, I come off as sounding like preachy or I'm lecturing people, but I'm really literally writing like to myself, like, remember, dumbass, like this is how you're supposed to do this stuff, is kind of really what I'm trying to do there. But what I found was like I was having trouble finding a good resource for versatile hunting dogs, like where you could just go and read and look at stuff. And that's one of the things that I try to emphasize a lot is I think like a lot of folks don't introduce e-collar until they're doing force fetch. And there's so much basic obedience work that we overlay the e-collar over before we use it for retrieving for me, for the way I do stuff, that it ends up kind of it mitigates a lot of those problems you're talking about, right? Because the dog is already very fluent.
Yeah, they're not just superstitions like this only happens here and fuck I don't like it, dude. It's like, no, this is generalizing, this is generalizing, this is generalizing, this is generalizing. Now you're out here, guess what you just felt? Me. All right. Because you've generalized with everything else that I've done it. Even if it's a little bit harder than you're used to feeling this, it's still from me. And sometimes I want it to be a little bit harder than you're used to feeling it because you're not doing what you're being told. And the environment, the stimulus in the environment has reached a level where I need to kind of cut through that noise to bring up that stimulus a little bit higher. But the dog knows that is from me, right? And so it's like a tap on the shoulder when the voice doesn't work, or if the dog doesn't even hear my voice, I can still chat with them. Nate is very good at e-collar work. I only use them sparingly. You have to be good at the collar. Yes, absolutely. You can undo good training. A lot of things can undo good training. A lot of just misunderstanding what the actual training or the fundamentals behind it. Jackie says, one of my dogs was forced to water. She had to be forced back to land because she would not get out of the water. Right. I've seen that happen, man. That's where I was like, what do you do when that happens? I've seen a dog that was from a rescue situation that I'm sure never saw water before because I thought he thought it was a big gray field because he just took off running like it was like, and he just went, but don't right underneath the water. And he was just like, oh my God, like swimming back. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's permeable, bro. Like you don't.
And that a lot of what you're talking about, Bill, like I think with hunting dogs, that's really the big challenge is getting the dog to push through different kinds of cover. That's like the hunting dog version of when I watch people do like the box work where they're desensitized. They're hitting the dog with like a clatter stick or they're blowing on them with a leaf blower, like that kind of environmental desensitization that a lot of folks are doing in bite work for different ring sports and things. Like the hunting dog version of that is getting your dog comfortable with cover. Like, will your dog fetch a bird out of a thorn bush? Like, will they endure pain to go recover stuff? Will they go into water? Do they look at like the boundary where a field meets like a hedgerow? Do they look at that as like a hard boundary that they can't push through? And so those kinds of things are really, really important. I think a lot of people do a bad job of teaching that because when we go out and plant birds for these dogs, we plant them in fields where they're easy for us to get to and easy for us to kind of work around. And so we're not planting that stuff usually in the places where we actually find them, which is often on edge cover or where things are transitioning and stuff like that. And I think that's a really important part of the work that we do with our bird dogs.
Well, and a lot of times they have to like flush them out through taller grass or like there is no trail, right? And they have to trail blaze and they have to flush and move and
Yeah, and then handling dogs is like an entirely different skill set compared to training them, right? So like when I'm handling my dogs, and then again, this is stuff like having a friend like my friend Tyler to cut your learning curve is really helpful. You're walking up behind your dog and they're pointing birds and bushes, and so it's me and my dogs on one side of the bush. Well, where do you think the bird's going to squirt out? They're going to go to the other side of the bush where you don't have a shot because you can't see where they even came out of. So like walking around to the other side so that you're kind of covering that other escape route, and then you're kind of giving the bird that third direction to go, right? Like that kind of stuff.
Again?
What's that? Birds, Booze, and Buds. It's just a podcast. He doesn't.
No, what's the blog that you write on?
It's gundogworkshop.com.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you. So
no, you're good.
Saying is you're pointing where the dog, you're helping the dog find the right answer, right?
And then the other thing that I did a lot, and I see a lot of new handlers do that I didn't even know until he kind of pointed it out to me, is people will back their dogs. So like in pointing dog stuff, you have one dog point, and then the other dog sees that dog is pointing, and then basically the second dog points the pointing dog. They call that backing. And what a lot of people do is their dog goes on point and then they stop, and it's like they want to just admire and soak in this beautiful picture of their dog pointing on some beautiful landscape. And what you need to do is get your ass up there, because your dog already did their job and found the bird. And so you need to get up and kind of get that bird in the air so you can shoot it. And I didn't even realize how much I was doing that. And it increased my success rate in terms of like the number of birds that I'm shooting or whatever other game I'm pursuing. If I just like my dog did their job and it's my time to kind of go in and handle that stuff.
Yeah. And recognize that, man, because the dog's like, dude, where you at, man?
Yeah,
I'm holding still. Dude, this is great website, bro. Like I like.
Thanks.
I'm gonna point it. Here's the gun dog workshop. Oh, I got to put up a couple other links here. Hold on, let me stop sharing this and because I got a jam here in about 7 minutes. I got a hard stop because I got an appointment. But I want you guys to know, if you like what I do, please consider supporting me at Patreon. Nate is one of my Patreon people. So
that's and you do that, and then with that gun dog workshop website, like I don't think I am good enough at this stuff or know enough about it to actually take money from people to like train their dogs doing hunting dog stuff, right? But I have a similar thing where if people want to kind of put money there, it helps cover costs of my birds and some of the travel that I do and things. So there's something there if people are interested in that. And my thing, like Bill, the reason why I supported you is because I like what you're doing and I find a lot of value in it. So it's not a ton of money, and so it's like it's just, I think if we all kind of helped each other out that way a little bit, it would be good. And it's kind of the way that people buy into what you're doing.
Well, and I make enough money doing other things, but I want to do this full time, and I look forward to doing it full time someday, and I will. But I just know that people will see the value in this that I provide. But because I'm going to just be bringing people, and dude, I know you, like we know each other, and they'll see the authenticity of who we are and what we love to do, because we do it every single day, man. And this is what we traded our lives to do, right? And that's what's so beautiful about these live streams. And if you guys haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. Bow Wow Bill on YouTube. I'm trying to get 1,000 subscribers over there as well. And share this stuff, man, and utilize this stuff. You guys are welcome to utilize this in on the websites that you do. Like, you're welcome to do it on your dog blog, but chunk it up any way that you want to benefit others, because at the end of the day, I think we're all in this for the dogs.
Yeah. I think the one other thing that I wanted to mention, because it's really important to me, is I think a lot of times when dog trainers present themselves, they kind of act like they were fully formed and they kind of just had all this information, or they invented this stuff themselves. And so I just wanted to kind of mention a couple people that are really influential on the stuff that I'm doing and that I really like watching and learning from them. And so I mentioned Dave and Linda earlier, but I really like Pat Nolan's stuff a lot. Linda worked for Pat Nolan for a bit, and I think he's probably one of the best dog trainers alive. He does mostly retriever stuff, and then he does government contract work, I think, with like Malinois and other dogs. Detection and maybe some civil stuff too. He did some stuff with anti-poaching in Africa, and he's just brilliant. And what I like about him is people that they like Bart's work, who is another guy that I really really like what Bart and Michael Bellin do. Pat, I think his real gift is that he can take really complex concepts and distill them down into 1 or 2 sentences that make it really easily accessible to anybody to kind of understand it. His use of language is what I think impresses me most, and that makes him a really brilliant teacher. And then folks like Dick Stahl and Mike Suttle and Randy Hare and Jerry Bradshaw. If you'll notice, Tony Anchetta for sure. God, it would have been really. I would have had to commit Harry Carey if I would have forgotten.
I got you, man. Well, and I've had interviews with Linda and with Dave Cochran, and Pat I've talked to, and he's definitely coming on here, and I'm definitely going to be circling back because I talked to him, I think during COVID.
And then some of these NAVDA folks that have never taken a dime to train a dog ever, but are some of these guys that I've met through these hunting dog organizations are some of the best trainers I've ever met. I mean, in the Dratar group, Brian Smith and Tony Ladow are 2 guys that I consider really good friends that they wouldn't tell you they're dog trainers other than they train their own dogs, but they're brilliant. I mean, just really intuitive, great at what they do. And then in my NAVDA chapter, Chip Bondi, Ed Newsom, I'm getting ready to meet a guy, Mark Whalen. He's been a longtime judge, longtime NAVDA member, been on a bunch of podcasts, and I did a mock test and I got my ass handed to me a little bit in some of the field work, and he was like, "Hey, I can fix that for you, and I can fix it so that it stays fixed." He was like, "Just send me a note." So I'm meeting him on Friday, and it's just like he's just going to help me out because he loves dogs, particularly these versatile dogs. And man, these people are just
in the comments down below too. And John says, "Bow Bill, good, very good work. Thank you, John. That's all I ask." And I got you, Bow Wow, not Now Wow, but Now Wow is good too, I guess. But just share this along, man, and that's why I put this stuff out there. And do you know what, dude? I just got to notice I've been doing this for like 5 years now, doing these interviews with people. Isn't that
really
crazy?
It's been that long? That's awesome.
Yeah, and
but my biggest point I'm trying to give to the pet dog trainer people is they got to learn from working dog folks. That's you're just gonna you'll elevate your game so much more.
You'll understand the dog on a deeper level. You'll understand the role of that particular animal, and not only that, but you're going to see a different side of that dog that fulfills that dog. You know what I'm saying? And I actually got to go too, man. So we're gonna wrap this up, but we're gonna have you on here again, and we're gonna have Gretchen on, and we're gonna get deeper into the working dog aspect of this. But I appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the time.
I appreciate your friendship, and look forward to hanging out with you again someday. And
I'm gonna make my way out there to you one day,
dude. Let's do it because we'll do some bird stuff up here because I mean even the guy in the gear blog, he was hunting here in Washington, and there's so much here in Washington, so many birds, and I'm just all about it, man. And it'll benefit the work that I'm doing with my clients, but it's also I just love it because of what it does for the dogs, you know.
Yeah. For
absolutely.
Sure. Thanks so much, man.
Yeah, you bet. Let's and George says he's got to go too. Good to see you, George. And then Linda says, absolutely, we'll sign up with this. Absolutely, anything worth learning is from working dog trainers. And then here's Kinsey. Yeah, we're leaving, man. You missed it, but you can watch the replay, Kinsey. All right, we'll say goodbye to everybody, and then I'll say goodbye to you in the studio, Nate. So,
all right, man. Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.